Hey there everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Important Figures. Today we welcome H, a man who's experienced much hardship that others relate to. H wrote a short story on his own life in which we follow him through his experiences of slavery, convict leasing, and systemic racism. Now H, tell us, why did you choose to write this story? My story is one of many. As an African American, I face many challenges daily. I start off my story by describing what it took to arrest me, in my current state in a prison cell. I'd been arrested for studying a white girl, something that couldn't be proved, yet I was guilty. White men wanted to lock me away. They wanted to lock us all away. They wanted to put us back in chains. I lived in the North where slavery didn't exist, but we all knew that wasn't true. I'd been enslaved before, and where I was headed was much the same. I worked for years mining, unpaid, and treated worse than when I was a slave. See, they didn't care about us, and not that they cared when we were enslaved, but we held a value as a currency then. As prisoners, we were worth nothing. So I wrote this story to explain and describe just how impactful the convict leasing system was in today's society. And how does it affect today? I think that white people realized they had created something much larger than slavery, and maybe even better. All they had to do was create laws that allowed them to arrest us for nothing, then throw us in jail, use us to make money, and at no expense. See, this way they eliminated having to pay for us. They can now have us for free while creating jobs for themselves to abuse us. In a messed up way, it was smart. Because even though convict leasing may not be the first thing someone thinks about when it comes to the oppression of Black people in history, it may be the most significant. White people found a way to legally enslave us, and the only way we could stop it was to be in a position of power. So that means we needed rights, the ability to vote, and the ability to run for office. And even if we could get all of that, we still need to get past racism, which is basically impossible. So when I say convict leasing impacts today's society, I'm saying that the system that was created years ago is still the same system with just a few tweaks that allow it to still be legal today. And what do you mean by still legal? A concept that many people don't understand is systemic racism. We had a justice system, in which I illustrated in my story, that will arrest Black people for nothing and then put us to work as slaves. Now we have a justice system that will arrest us for nothing or minor crimes, charge us with felonies, and take away our right to vote. As I mentioned earlier, in order for us to stop the convict leasing system, we needed to vote and to replace people in office with people who share our ideas. So if we can't vote, then we have no voice. This is a part of systemic racism. Just as I had to watch over my back for any white officer to arrest me for what they thought to be a crime, Black people still have to watch over their backs for what white people judge to be a crime. I'll give you an example. Weed is commonly used all around America. In some states, it's fully legal and decriminalized, and in others, it's not. The law legally allows officers to pull anyone over because they feel like it, because they are suspicious. They can pull over Black people, most likely for no reason or a small traffic violation, but end up putting them in jail for a felony crime. This is by illegally searching their cars because of suspicion. But all the judge or jury sees is possession of weed or whatever drug they had. Despite how I may feel about the dangers of weed, these laws were created in order to charge Black people with felony crimes, taking away their rights. Yes, the law was not written saying it only affects Black people, and it doesn't. It affects more than just Black people. But then again, 63% of drug charges are on African Americans. This all makes sense, but who's to say that Black people don't just use more drugs? I mean, well, I find it hard to believe that white people who are statistically wealthier, statistically more likely to have these drugs, statistically more likely to own a vehicle, are 3 times less likely be in jail for possession of drugs, statistically. So when I said that the justice system is just a tweaked version of the justice system in the early 1900s, it truly is, and drugs are just one of the many ways to jail Black people and take away their rights. In your story, you describe what happens when you make it out of jail. Would you also say that life after prison then is similar to someone's life after prison today? I mean, I would say so. When I got released, I tried to restart. I tried to move on, get a job, and start fresh. But I soon found out that no one hires anyone with a record, especially a Black person in general. So The same kind of applies today. You get a misdemeanor and maybe you can still get a job, but a felony, it's very unlikely that you'll get a job, especially a high-paying job. This creates a loop. Prison takes away your whole life. Not only is your voice gone, but your ability to rejoin society is gone. Prison is supposed to be rehabilitation, so it's supposed to teach you to never commit a crime again and to be able to function as a law-abiding citizen. Yet that same place blocks you from getting a job, which means you can't afford a house, a car, so you won't even need a bank account. So then what do? You go work at McDonald's? No, they require a bank account, which requires an address, which requires, a house. So you don't have a job to get that house. So you can't do that. They assume that everyone has a backup, that everyone has a family with a house, extra money, and the ability to help someone get back into society. But that's not the reality. In my story, I explain that I have to go back to working the same job that I had when I was incarcerated, but this time paid, and I mean barely paid. I was lucky enough to live with a friend, but back then I didn't need a bank account or social security or any of that to get a job in the first place. So you're saying that the system built is created to capture you and keep you there? Exactly. I'm saying that white people built and refined a system that has managed to make a new version of slavery for years and years. I would argue that convict leasing is the single most important part of our history. It's legal slavery. And even if we put black people in positions of power and make laws allowing more black people to be in power, it doesn't matter, because the most important part of our government is the people and their voice, or the right to vote. And many of us don't have that and never will. It's a loop, and the only way to get out of it is to change the system, so that our voices aren't suppressed and that we can finally get to the next step. If we can do that, then we might have a chance of changing things. Other than that, white people will always have the power. That's a lot, but I think you're correct. Thank you for coming on today and sharing your experiences. It means a lot to explain what you did. Thank you. All right. Thank you for watching today's episode of Important Figures, and we'll see you next week.